my wife will attest that everywhere we've gone, I always point out the AEDs, and I find it impressive sometimes in actually where you find them. And then I find it also impressive, or I did find it impressive that you places that you should find them that you don't.
Hello, and welcome to yet another edition of Beating Cardiac Odds. This is Greg Coon with Cardiac Crusade. Today we're talking with Nick Canara. He's got, frankly, an amazing story to tell. So let's just jump right into it. Nick, how are you doing today?
Hi, Greg. Thanks for having me today.
You bet. So much appreciate you spending the time. First of all, tell me a little bit about yourself, who you are, family, that kind of stuff.
Sure. So I live in a town called Sturbridge, Massachusetts. It's pretty smack dab central in the state, on the southern border. So we're pretty close to Connecticut too. I live with my amazing wife, Annie, and our son, Wellesley, who we just welcomed into this world this past summer.
Congratulations.
I thank you very much. Both are doing wonderful. I work as a firefighter paramedic for the Auburn Fire Rescue Department in Auburn, Massachusetts. It's a suburb right outside the city of Worcester. I'm a proud third generation fireman. My grandfather and my father before me did the job, and they did it extremely well. So I have large shoes to fill and to follow, certainly. And I'm surrounded by healthcare workers in my family. My mom is a nurse, my aunt is a nurse, and I have several uncles and cousins who work in law enforcement. So I'm very proud to be a part of a family in public safety.
Awesome to hear about your family. Okay, now you have a company also that you run. Tell me about your company.
Sure. So I want to say I've grown to be a pretty good self-starter through the motivation and example that my grandfather and my father both set for me in creating small business in our communities. And being in public safety, it kind of brought some ideas of what I could do, and what I could put my name on as a small business. So, in right after COVID, or right around the time COVID was ending, I came up with Safe Greens USA. So, being a paramedic working in pre-hospital medicine, I've come to the conclusion that um, there's a lot in the public that helps me do my job, and really that's affected through CPR and the use of an AED. And my wife will attest that everywhere we've gone, I always point out the AEDs, and I find it impressive sometimes in actually where you find them. And then I find it also impressive, or I did find it impressive that you places that you should find them that you don't. So I came up with this cause to combat places like golf courses, function halls. The most recent one has been pickleball courts, and bringing awareness to sudden cardiac arrest, CPR, and AED use, but also the need to implement more public accessible AEDs in my community and the communities that surround us.
So you gave a good wide description. Focus on just your golf story,
Sure.
and yeah, just because I know you love the game of golf,
Yeah.
and how that incorporated into what you're doing, specifically to golf courses. Even though it expands more than that, it's interesting what you did with golf courses.
Sure. So the idea for the golf courses, and you'll, I guess, conclude it with the name Safe Greens USA. I was playing golf with my grandfather, and as he aged, I realized that we were out in the middle of nowhere, and I had all these skills and abilities as a paramedic, and I had no confidence in my ability even with providing aid to him and how I was going to get him off the golf course, and resources that I would have in the location that we were in. Your average golf course is anywhere from 100 to 150 acres, spanned, most commonly in rural areas of the world. And I didn't feel comfortable after that. I guess playing golf, a game that I find so much joy in. I spend many a weekends with buddies and my family playing golf. So I came up with this idea that I would target risk management across the golf course. And I came up with this idea of bringing CPR and AED training, AEDs to the golf course, and also creating and implementing emergency action plans for golf courses to have on record, and also the emergency management directors and local and state responding authorities in the emergency departments to implement a way to access and remove the medically ill and injured from a golf course.
So, have you had, as a professional, have you had experience at a golf course? And I'm going to ask you this, outside of a golf course uh, location, is what is your experience with arriving on the scene as a professional, and
Sure.
there is a lifeless body, and you've got someone who's laying there, and nobody's doing anything, compared to coming up to a situation, you got a lifeless body, but someone's doing something, CPR, they get the AED. Tell me the difference. Why is that so important to have the on location first response, the bystanders to do something?
Sure. So as a pre-hospital provider, as a paramedic, we're summoned all the time for emergencies like that. And the way I look at it is, when we get dispatched for an unresponsive or a cardiac arrest victim, there's really one of two ways that it's going to go for everybody. It still takes the call takers at the dispatch center some time to receive the call. Once it's made, we have to be dispatched, and even if it's across the street, we still have time against us to get in the emergency vehicles, respond safely but efficiently, and then retrieve all of our equipment and access the medical victim. So there's two ways of thinking, right? Is you have one scenario where there's the uneducated or the intimidated group of individuals surrounding the cardiac arrest victim. Maybe they're uneducated, maybe they're tremendously afraid of the skill or the event, and they unfortunately are waiting for us to arrive and not being incredibly proactive while I'm en route. And then the other better scenario, and the scenario that brings significant higher chances of resuscitation and survivability, is when you have those individuals who are CPR and AED trained or aware of CPR, and they begin high quality chest compressions, and in tandem access a local AED, a public accessible AED. And I stress this to everybody that I run into, that AEDs, it's in the name, automatic. It doesn't require much training at all, besides understanding what that acronym means and what it can do to somebody that has collapsed. Press the on button. They paint it green for a reason, for the intrigued mind. And once you turn it on, it tells you what to do. And in my career thus far, the greatest success stories and the best outcomes were the latter, were the individuals that received high quality chest compressions and the use of a public accessible AED prior to my arrival.
Perfect. I'm going to loop back around on your golf course. Have you had any specific successes working with your local golf courses and implementing any of these ideas that you're putting forth?
It's a slow transition into it, I think, or an idea or a concept to accept. Um, Unfortunately, like in any industry, sometimes tragedy brings most awareness. And I think we've sometimes gotten lucky by how medical emergencies are handled and where they're occurring. I know for me, in the local jurisdictions that I work around, sometimes when you get a call for a medical incident at a golf course, the first place you respond to, if there's no other further information, is the clubhouse. And on a 18-hole golf facility, the clubhouse may be the furthest point away from where the medical emergency is occurring. Um, I talk about this idea with many colleagues of mine, and a lot of them pose the counter. They'll say, "Well, why don't the individuals with the medically ill or injured, why don't they just throw them in the golf cart and drive them up to the clubhouse or up to the nearest road?" And that's certainly doable if you have the right able bodies and the ability to secure somebody in that golf cart. But more than not, more chances than not that it might not be the instance or the probability. So what I try to bring awareness to is not to scare any individuals. I don't want to deter anybody from playing the game of golf. I want to encourage people to play more golf. I hope my son picks it up. I hope, I have my cousins playing now, but I really try to instill this idea that if anything was to go wrong, that you're as prepared as possible. I say as of now, I have the safest foursome in the game of golf because if I go out and play golf, I carry the AED, my personal AED. I bring in the golf cart with me. And again, it's the I use the example of it. You're selling a snowblower to a Floridian resident. We hope you never have to use it, but if you ever needed it, you have it. And in the golf course world, sometimes that's a concept they don't want to hear because it costs money, it costs training, it costs time. But we spoke prior to this podcast, and we said that if one of the AEDs that we place in the public or bring awareness to saves a life, I think the entire mission was complete. So,
Yeah, I mean, all of this work that we're doing with Cardiac Crusade, if it saves one life, it's well worth it, obviously. So, tell me some of your experience. So, with mapping AEDs, because, and I want to kind of bridge from what you were able to do before by identifying AEDs and putting them on pulse point. So, before we even met and first spoke, you were posting or mapping AEDs to pulse point. How did you come across pulse point? Does your municipality utilize pulse point in their systems?
so none of the municipalities that I'm aware of in the immediate area utilize Pulse Point directly, but I think your ideas and your concepts are incredibly forward thinking, and I had seeked a type of method to bring public awareness to AD locations in the past. I came upon Pulse Point through a Google search about 2 years ago, and I began in my AED installs and just travels started to use the Pulse Point app. And what I learned though is that the Pulse Point app is really only uh, it only works if others have access to it and know about it. And and colleagues again, and even in the firehouse, telling people about the Pulse Point app and trying to bring awareness to it. But your concept and what we spoke about is just so interesting because I think the path that you're on too while working with Pulse Point is you're going after something that everybody uses every single day and they don't even know it, and it's the maps, right? It's the maps attached to our phones and GPS, and that is what the next step has to be. Is Pulse Point's doing amazing work. They're putting thousands and thousands of AEDs out there for people to see. It's very easy for these dispatch centers to bring, to see it. But like anything, it takes adoption and it takes people to start to use it. So, but I think Pulse Point's an amazing app. I use it every time I can to list AEDs. Now working with Cardiac Crusade, I'm happy to announce that Safe Greens and our local area will have us as a verifier, so we can start listing and bringing more to the app, which is very exciting. And I'm very happy to partner with Cardiac Crusade with that, and certainly the Boston chapter. We're gonna go after Massachusetts and New England really hard with it. We're gonna bring a lot of AEDs into the cloud.
So, so let me do my little kind of background on Pulse Point if those people watching don't understand. So, Pulse Point is, I mean, there are multiple websites and databases and apps out there that have to do with AED locations and listings, but at least here in the United States, Pulse Point is really the only one that we should be even talking about because it's the only one that verifies AEDs. You got a person that is verifying that AED is at this location, and it's there and it's working. And there's a regular cycle where you re-verify that it's there. So anyone can go to Pulse Point and identify an AED. But because this involves life and death situations, they want to make sure that the that it is actually verified by a trusted person. So before Cardiac Crusade came along, a trusted person was considered, a firefighter, paramedic within its own municipality. Where Cardiac Crusade, we don't have any geographic boundaries. We want to go everywhere. We want to go across the country. So how do our volunteers, have the ability to verify an AED? And I'll tell what a verifier is if you're a 911 dispatcher, you've got your screens right in front of you. For free, every single city, county, village, town, state has free access to this database. All you just do is you just plug in a little coding, and you have an API that goes directly from the Pulse Point servers into your database. So if you're a 911 operator and someone calls and says someone's not breathing, all the signs that say that they're having a cardiac arrest, they say, well, first of all, start CPR. The second question in that little calling tree that the 911 operators have is there an AED? Well, that's part of the chain of survival. The chain of survival is someone collapses. Number one, call 911. Number two, start CPR. And number three, get the AED. But the problem is that there is a huge gap in that is, where is the AED? People don't know where the AEDs are. If you're in a parking lot and someone collapses, there are countless stories of someone who died of a sudden cardiac arrest, and there was an AED frickin' 50 feet away. That should not have happened. So the 911 operators, now they need to incorporate this, because you're right. You said, it's an implementation thing, but it's free access. Why would a 911 operator not want to have free access to a piece of equipment that will save someone's life? Because if you could say, okay, is someone doing CPR? Yes. Okay, get someone else to run across the street to the restaurant X and go get the AED. It's behind their front desk. They'll do that. That takes 45 seconds. When it takes the ambulance 7, 8, 9, whatever, sometimes more minutes. That's the difference between someone living and someone dying. So that's what we're doing now. Now, I'm also going to go, that's right. Today, that is the situation with 911 operators. So our volunteers are filling the database and adding those AEDs. Our phase two, it'll happen. I can't wait for it to happen, when you can just hold up your phone and say, hey, Google, hey, Siri, where's the closest AED? And it pops up like if you're asking where the closest Starbucks is. And that's what our mission is. We're still going on that road. It'll happen. It might take a month, a year, 10 years, but we are in conversations with both of those entities. So in the background, that's what we're working really hard to make that happen. But in the meantime, we still need to have a robust database. So let me throw a couple statistics out there. San Diego, shining star in this world. They have over 2,600 plus AEDs in San Diego. The national survival rate for cardiac arrest is 10%. If you have a sudden cardiac arrest in San Diego, obviously depending on where you are geographically in the city, the survival rates are between 50 and 70%, which is crazy. But that shows how survivable a cardiac arrest can be. There are a couple cities in eastern Massachusetts that have a survival rate of 3%, which is another crazy on the other extreme. In Massachusetts, Boston area, that's like medical city central for the world, and so that's what we're working on, and that's why we have this campaign specifically for Massachusetts, because we want to get those AEDs first of all mapped, and that's why we've got our army of volunteers, and then also make sure that every single municipality within the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, their 911 system and their operators should have access to this free database, because it will save lives. But you're right, it's an implementation situation. Any thoughts on all that?
Well, I think, right, free is the big word. I think it's just education and bringing light to this ability to have. again, Pulse Point is an amazing app, and it's only as amazing as the people that are aware of it, both the layperson, in the street, and the dispatchers that give that direction. Um, and I think certainly Boston and bigger cities around here, I can imagine that the AEDs are plentiful. It's the awareness of their location and how we get those locations to be known. And the only way is your volunteers, and the mission that you and Pulse Point and all of us are trying to make is bringing awareness to AEDs in their locations, and being able to retrieve them quickly. I think that is the chain to survivability.
Absolutely. And it's that gap between, okay, we need to get an AED and knowing where it is located. I mean, that's just so huge. So I'll throw one more little thing is, so we've got this campaign for Massachusetts. And last year we had our campaign in Western New York, Buffalo, New York area. And we started the similar campaign, even though it was what we're doing now in Boston. Frankly, if we learned of so much in Buffalo, and Buffalo is actually, my dad's born and raised in Buffalo, so I've got a huge part of me is Buffalo, New York area. But we took what we learned in Buffalo and we're taking it and just exploding it here in what we're doing in Boston and Massachusetts area. But what we started with was 115 AEDs on the map in Buffalo. Our goal was 1,000 AEDs to get mapped. I had a reporter say, "How many do you want? What's your goal?" And I'm like, "Oh, that's a good question. I have no idea where it even 10, 1,000. I have no idea." So I literally said 1,000. I don't know why it just came out of my mouth, but I said 1,000. I'm thinking, there's no way 1,000. Ended up with 1,200 plus AEDs
Wow.
that are volunteers in Western New York mapped. So with that, we're like, okay, 1,500 is what we're doing in Massachusetts. And but there are I got to tell you, it's very heartening to, we've got our core group. We call ourselves because I'm, damn it, part of it, the Boston Shock Squad. Even though I'm in Texas, I'm part of the Boston Shock Squad. But we've got a group of about a half a dozen of us that are just taking the bull by the horns and wanting to make this happen. And it's not just five of us. Anyone can be part of this Boston Shock Squad. Anyone can join in and help, implement some of these ideas. And we're just, I've thrown some crazy ideas, and they're like, that's a little crazy, Greg. But that's what it takes, coming up with different ideas. There are 2 or 3 things that I did. I thought it would be a home run. Nah. But then there's some things that came out of nowhere. Like we had I don't want to give details on this just because, because I want to announce it at the right time. We had one little connection to Harvard University. And that one little connection led to another conversation with someone else. Well, that conversation with someone else can now expand what we're doing coast to coast. And so there's a lot of things that come out of nothing and unexpectedly, which is just wonderful. And as the person who came up with this little crazy idea, after my wife Julie had her sudden cardiac arrest and she's in the hospital, she had let me tell that story real quick. She was talking to a friend at our local high school. She was after doing a charity event. She talking to her friend, and she just collapsed. And the stats are she was 911 was called immediately. She was getting chest compressions within 45 seconds, and within 2 minutes, she got the first of 2 shocks. Wow. And at 3 minutes, 2 ambulances arrived. So it was the perfect situation, and she had a full recovery. She does have an ICD, which is a little implanted device that will shock her if needed. It's never gone off. Probably will never go off because the hurt but we think what caused her cardiac arrest is kind of an unusual one-off situation. She's very healthy and has no blockage or anything like that. Um, so
Oh, Greg, if I
that's
can interrupt very
please,
quickly,
absolutely, yeah.
I just wanna uh, say that I'm very happy to hear of the positive outcome of your wife, and I can only imagine how that felt, during and following. But obviously, it's lit a fire under you to give back, and like almost like an appreciation that you experienced this, and with the positive outcome of the AED and the CPR provided and the medical resources that she was given. Uh, wow, that is a very powerful connection to all of this,
And,
and I'm proud to hear of the outcome.
absolutely, me too, obviously. And it was one of those things where I, before Julie's cardiac arrest, I didn't know the difference between a cardiac arrest and a heart attack. I've seen those things on the wall. I kind of knew they were medical something, but I really didn't understand what they were for. Now I really understand. Now I really understand the importance of you've got to jump on that body immediately, because every second that goes by, that brain starts to die. That's why you got to do the chest compressions. But chest compressions are just buying minutes. The AED is the only thing that will actually shock and restart the heart. So, yeah, I was at my desk, and now I have this realization of what this cardiac arrest, what a cardiac arrest means when it happens to someone, and why you've got to take immediate action. And I'm looking at my phone, and I was like, why is it that you can say, hey, Google, hey, Siri, where's the closest Starbucks? But you can't do that with an AED. That was my little silly idea. And, a
Yeah.
couple years later, here we are. But, one of the things, our contact over at Google Maps said, he said, look, it might take a month, it might take a year, it might take 10 years. It will be a thing. And so in the meantime, the database that would go into Google Maps and Apple Maps will API from the Pulse Point servers. Those AEDs that are on the Google Maps are not on Google Maps servers. They are API'd from the trusted source, which is Pulse Point. So it's kind of a parallel road, two roads that work in parallel. One of the things that we have to do is we have to have a robust database. Excuse me, and that's what all these volunteers are doing. That's what the army of volunteers are doing. So now that we've got 1,200 AEDs listed in the Western New York area, those are now available to those 911 operators. And statistically, because of HIPAA, we can't find out who was actually saved and all that stuff. So statistically, though, those AEDs, and I'm trying to remember the number, I think it's 6. I think 6 lives, again, statistically, will be saved in Western New York because of the work we did there. So, yeah, that's what we're doing.
Well,
That's what we're doing it.
I wouldn't be lying if I said the state of Massachusetts and the state of New York always have had a little bit of competition between each other. Certainly, this time of the year, and I'm not very proud to say that they beat us out this year in the baseball world. But I'm confident that the state of Massachusetts will supersede your 1,200 estimate in Western New York, and I have full confidence in the shock squad and the residents and verifiers, volunteers in Massachusetts that will blow those numbers out of the water.
There's one more thing. If you're okay, you want to talk about it, and you want to tell me about your grandmother and her sudden cardiac arrest.
Yeah, my grandmother was receiving a very simple medical treatment at a clinic this past spring, and during the post-op portion of it, she had a witness cardiac arrest, and it was textbook sudden cardiac arrest. There was no warning signs. She had no pre-comorbidities. She was rather very healthy. Limited medications, no past medical history that would ever have put us, on a cardiac watch. And She had a witness cardiac arrest event in this clinic, and she received, much like your wife, immediate high quality chest compressions and the application of a defibrillator until the ambulance arrived. And she received some more life saving efforts. And she also had a positive result and a resuscitated event, and she survived. She's doing well. She's as bright as ever, and I can speak for my entire family that it's an immense joy to still have her here, and to know that, without the training, and this was in a medical clinic, so that it's comparatively a little different than your story of your wife, but still the training that these attendants received, and what they knew to do was to start CPR right away and use that AED, even if the ambulance was very close. Those actions certainly affected the positive outcome, and we're very grateful she's still here. And my business had already been created. And talk about a motivation. Talk about, you know, my family. I get this result. I want to give this result to others. I want people to be aware of CPR and the use of an AED, and how the ambulance, and you can have the best paramedics in the world and the closest response times, but if these acts can be given at such a short duration of time of the event, that's what's life saving. And I'm very grateful for those medical attendants and for the paramedics that took care of my grandmother. They did a fantastic job. And again, it just strikes that point of having AEDs and CPR training just so prevalent is very important.
Love it, love it, love it. It's so true. Okay. Anything else? Anything else you want to think about? You thought about any final thoughts before we
I'm
wrap up?
motivated. I was talking to my wife about it. We're excited to get out and start really mapping these AEDs.
Do you have a
This
plan?
month is August. What was that?
What's your plan? What's your plan on mapping it, other than just doing it? Do you have a thought, a process on how are you going to attack
So
all this?
that's a great question. I'm out in the field a lot, teaching CPR. We place AEDs a lot, but I'm just not going to focus there. I'm just not going to take the photos and verify the ones that I install. I'd love to really. I know there's, in this area where we have a lot of CrossFit gyms, we have a lot of function halls, and I know for a fact that they have AEDs. I just don't think other people know it. And I think too, when I visit these facilities, I'm anticipating, and I can't wait to bring awareness to what we're doing. I can't wait to introduce myself, and I say, not really here to use your gym today or your function hall, but I'd like to take a picture of your AED, so I can bring awareness to others that you have this AED, and the lives that it could save by bringing such awareness. And my wife and I are attending the Boston Cardiac Crusades event next Thursday. We're very excited to connect and to see everybody there, and to have a lot of like-minded individuals in the same place. And yeah, I'm grateful for what Cardiac Crusade's doing. It's certainly a foundation, and a just direction that I see this needs to go. And you're taking it by the reins, and it's really excited to see.
Love it. Thank you so much, and thank you because, yes, I had this little crazy idea, but I can't do it I can't do it by myself. We have to have and the term army of volunteers is actually, I think, a perfect definition for what's required to make this happen, because it's already an army of volunteers. We now have over 100 Cardiac Crusade volunteers in Massachusetts. I think
Wow.
in Buffalo, I think, I'll need to look this up. I think we maybe have 15 or 20. And look what we did with 15 and 20. And now we're at 100, and we're still adding more every day, more volunteers. And so I'm just so, I think about this almost all the time, about what we're
Yeah.
doing and the impact that it'll have on people and lives. And so, yes,
And you you
awesome.
you brought this up earlier about networking and connecting with people that you talk to, but 100 of those volunteers know at a minimum 10 people that they can tell this about, and that's 1,000 people. And even if you don't have 1,000 volunteers, you at least have 1,000 people that are aware of what's going on, and those 1,000 people might tell one or two more intriguing people, and it's that cool cycle. And I tell people all the time about CPR training, and not everybody needs to know CPR, but if you can push hard and fast in the center of the chest, you're a CPR provider. I've never met somebody that's providing high quality CPR and somebody stops them to ask them for their certification card or their past experience. So I think what you're doing and what I'm very excited to be a part of is we're creating something like wildfire and public awareness for AED use, AED location, AED locators like Pulse Point, and hopefully what Cardiac Crusades breaks the ceiling with someday. And I'm excited to be a small percentage of the team and be a part of that.
Awesome, awesome. Nick, you're a rock star. I appreciate you so much. I cannot wait to see you and your wife next week. So, yeah, it's crazy.
Thank you. We can't wait, Greg. It's been unbelievable to meet you and to connect. And I kept telling people all week that I met this guy in Dallas, Texas, or a suburb outside of Dallas, Texas. And they're like, what? And I'm like, just wait. Just wait and see what this guy's doing. And so, again, no one person, 100. So
Exactly.
I think that's what's going to happen here. So thank you
Awesome.
so much.
All right, Nick, thank you for the time. Thank you for chit-chatting with me, and I cannot wait to see you next week. And I appreciate everyone watching and listening, and let's go save some lives.